Alrighty guys, we're with Tyler here. We're going to run through some FAQs, so frequently asked questions. Question number one is one that we get asked fairly often. How many days a week should we train?
The answer, I guess, it depends. Depends on your goals, your lifestyle, some of the challenges that you may face in your own life. But for the average person that shows up to the gym, I would say anywhere from about 3 to 5 sessions per week, prioritizing a mixture of weightlifting, conditioning, and gymnastics training. Ideally, we'd like a lot of our athletes to come in those Monday, Wednesday days, especially as they include some form of challenging gymnastic movement, a barbell Olympic lift, and then they also generally include a conditioning workout in there. So they get a broad spectrum of movements in the one session. If you are a little bit more fond of time, you have a bit more time on your hands and you could come in more often, you would then push towards 5 to get the most variety in the week, giving you about 2 days to rest if needed. Some of our top athletes will come 6 days a week and then do accessories in their own time. But for many, that's a bit unachievable for the average person as they have other commitments that they need to focus on. So we generally say 3 to 5 days a week is ideal.
And the easiest way to think about this is what defines it important to you is what you can recover from. So if you can only recover from 3 days, then 3 days is optimal for you. We often see on the other side of the coin athletes training too much. So training is a stressor. It does increase cortisol, which will increase fluid retention, ideally not in the correct areas. And if they're not recovering, then training those extra days is pointless.
Exactly. I agree.
Question number 2. As a female, what should I prioritize getting into training?
Well, look, I'm obviously not female, but I do get to train a lot of female athletes, both one-on-one and in the gym environment. And what I see time and time again is upper body pulling strength and pushing strength being a massive lacker. You'll generally see males coming in, beginner level, being able to do a strict pull-up off the bat, normally with no training or very little work in that particular movement. Men, on average, will just generally have more upper body strength. Our prior sports, rugby league, rugby union, AFL, that kind of thing, it really prioritizes more upper body strength. And just men in general do like to prioritize in their own time, push-ups, bench press, pull-ups, etc. It's just more sexy for us as males. But for females, then we're not, the society doesn't really picture towards doing those type of movements. The big booty movements, glutes and things like that are more sexy for the ladies. So doing upper body pulling movements like pull-ups, focusing on even going through a full pull-up cycle, potentially doing some overhead pressing, that will have big bang for your buck when it comes to your overall CrossFit improvement and nailing gymnastic movements.
And this doesn't make you jacked. It doesn't happen overnight. The average person is lucky to put on 4 pounds of muscle in a year training every day.
Yeah, I'm a proof of the pudding. This is 16 years of optimal training, and I'm nowhere near as big as I want to be.
Tyler's fucking huge. On the other side of the coin, as a beginner male, what should we be prioritizing?
Lower body training, it's more of the opposite, obviously. With that previous example, men do prioritize bench press, pull-ups, arm training, because it just makes them feel good, and it's what ladies generally look for in a man, is big arms, big upper body. However, for us as men, lower body generally tends to get neglected because A, it's not as enticing for a male to train, and B, most of us struggle with mobility. Lower body mobility is a big issue. You'll see tight ankles, tight hips, and sore knees just through either life, their workplace, or just their lack of mobility in those areas. So the lower body training will be more important, focusing on getting ass to grass in a squat, practicing some deep ranges of motion, even practicing a little bit of mobility prior to sessions is generally the best way to look at improving those movements. Running a squat cycle for a male would be advantageous.
I suppose on the topic of recovery, we do definitely see big trends in the fitness industry for gyms opening up. A common practice is recovery rooms, massage, therapy. We've got a lot of like heart rate monitors, things like that starting to pop up. Is this needed? Is this necessary? And what's your professional recommendation on that?
A lot of those recovery items are 1%ers. They are little extra additives that you can add into your already perfect routine to enhance recovery and performance in the gym. However, if you are sleeping not very well, you're not eating the best, and your training isn't consistent, there is no point in focusing on a 30-minute sauna where you would rather prioritize that to 30 minutes of extra sleep. If you can sleep 7 to 8 hours per night as a male, 8 to 9 hours per night as a female, if you are eating generally healthy food, 80% what they would call healthy food, and then 20% maybe even not so healthy, and eating a decent amount of calories for your body weight. And then you're coming to the gym 3 to 5 days a week, you're going to see more progression than that sauna, that ice bath, those recovery boots. Those things are nice to have, but they are not going to get your back squat bigger. You know, I've never seen a sauna improve someone's deadlift. Like, it's one of those things that's good to add on to your training if you're already doing all those right things correctly. Matt Gilpin, one of our old trainers for the gym, used to always say, there's no need to do 30 minutes of stretching before bed, because 30 minutes more sleep could be beneficial. If you're having 30 minutes more sleep every night, then maybe add, an extra bit of stretching in. But it's like these little 1%ers aren't going to make up more than the 99%ers you're already doing. Eat well, train hard and consistently, and get more sleep.
Yeah, there's a common theme that we tend to see where it's like, if you try and optimize a shit diet, it's still a shit diet.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that we tend to see. Most people can't train 3 days a week for 18 months straight. So going and bringing in watches and going and doing saunas and doing all these things, there's a reason why these gyms drop off and they keep changing ownership all the time, running the same business model. And that's because consistency is the one thing that people struggle with.
I actually find a watch tracking my sleep has been more negative for me than it has been positive. People wear the Whoop band all the time. They want to see their optimal level of sleep. They wake up after what would be considered a good night of sleep for them, and they're in the red zone, 1% recovery. You will die if you don't go to sleep more than 20 hours tomorrow. And it's like, but I swear I had a good night of sleep. So instead of you telling yourself how you feel after a night of sleep, you're allowing something that's not accurate to tell you how you should be feeling. So if my watch tells me I've had 6.5 hours sleep, but I feel like I've had 7, what do I believe? Do I believe my own opinion or something that's tracking it? I understand these tracking measures are good for measuring and improving, but it's like, how accurate is it really? And I started obsessing over the fact that I wasn't getting 6 hours sleep. I wasn't getting 7 hours sleep. And it actually made my sleep worse, because if I knew I couldn't get to bed or I was struggling to fall asleep, I would start panicking, overthinking it, getting more anxiety. And it ended up making my sleep in long term a whole lot worse. Someone like myself, I just ditch the watches and just rely on my own interpretation of how I feel after a night of sleep.
So advice moving forward is these things are nice to have, but you don't want to build a reliance on them. You inherently will become more fragile, because it becomes, I don't have my watch, I can't train hard because I can't track my calories, or my watch isn't telling me that I'm recovered, so my effort needs to be lower on my session, when really your effort should just always be high.
Yeah, I always say, if you train or try really, really, really hard, regardless of what the result was, whether you squatted 100 or 200, as long as in that session you tried really, really hard and you went close to failure, I think you're going to improve in the long term.
Another question number 5. So diet breaks. So nutrition and training. For me personally, as a coach, I think of these very much the same. So going through a training block, you will have deload weeks. Why do you have deload weeks?
In a lot of cases, most of my athletes, I don't even recommend a deload week. We might change some variables within a week, but normally the conventional reason for a deload week is to allow the CNS to recover. Normally, I believe personally, you would only program this after maximal effort. This would be after a competition where you're pushing your body above and beyond its normal limits. Powerlifting meets, it will be testing your 1RM 3 times over 9 lifts. In a CrossFit comp, it's 4 workouts in one day, a volume that you're not normally used to. However, a lot of the deload weeks probably extend a bit too long for a normal athlete and their level of training. If you're elite, top level, you're pushing the needle so far that you're, setting a new record for human performance. Maybe you do need a week to recover. If you're Eddie Hall deadlifting 500 kilos, maybe you do need a week to recover. But if you're Joe Blow, who trains 3 to 5 days a week and does the local beginner comp and does 4 CrossFit workouts, maybe you don't need a whole week to recover. Maybe you just need 1 to 2 days. And even then, you could do something active and easy, like walking or just moving around, maybe some light mobility and stretching work. I think the deload concept is taken too far for the regular person. My recommendation is just either lower the volume on your training and still keep the intensity high, or just look at taking 1 to 2 extra rest days in that week and just maintaining your training volume as best as you can in the remaining days that you have. As for a diet break, it's a bit different. I think diet breaks are definitely something that a lot of people should have, as your body is really, really good at adapting. And after you eat at a deficit or a surplus for a certain amount of times, there will be diminishing returns. Your body will adapt to the amount that you're eating, and unless you either move more or eat less, then you're going to have to make a change. It's also a mental fatigue thing, especially for the dieting phase of portion of things. So if you're eating in a deficit, it's going to get to a certain point where it's going to become almost too challenging to maintain a deficit that low to continue getting results. And that's when you need a diet break. Normally they say a 1-to-2 ratio. So if you diet for 4 weeks, you should have 8 weeks of maintenance. But that's just a recommendation. I think it's a pretty good one too, but it's one of those things where I believe diet breaks are actually essential, and deloads are actually over the top. Deload week, not so much. Deload day or two, I definitely agree. Unless you're elite, it probably doesn't have the same profound benefits, and you will probably recover because you just don't lift as much, or you're just not going to go as hard as your Matt Frasers or your Tia Claire Toomeys.
And the concept is pretty simple. It's all just stress management. So yeah, you're periodizing, you're under a lot of stress, so you have a break from the stress.
Yeah.
Same thing with food. If you're eating in a deficit, it's very stressful on your body. Like you're stressing your body to now try and pivot and change and do something different, which is using your outer post. Same concept. You're going to need to have a little bit of a break from it.
Yeah, and I actually think, ladies, for you guys, it is so much more important for you guys to have diet breaks than it is for men, as you guys have a lot more factors that play. Period cycles, hormone changes, and you guys aren't able to get as low on the body fat chain as a male would without starting to affect more factors than you need to. Other way around, men, you guys need more deload days than women. That you are going to lift more weight generally than a female compared to your body weight, and it just takes you longer to recover because your muscles are generally bigger. That's obviously not saying all men and all women, but on average, most men have bigger muscles and lift more weight. So it's just one of those things where you're going to need a little bit more break than your female counterparts. That even goes for rests between sets. They say, like, if a female does a heavy, hard set, they might rest 3 to 5 minutes. A male might need to rest 5 to 10 minutes to be able to perform the same effort. And that's just purely because more muscle, more weight, more recovery. And that's just a bit of a thing to keep in mind if you are someone who's in those kind of lines of work or that kind of area. So if you're like, oh shit, my partner doesn't have to rest as much as me, there's probably a reason why.
Last question. If I'm bodybuilding and I'm bored of my training and I'm struggling to get motivated, what do I do?
It depends. Depends on why you're bored, why you're bodybuilding instead of coming to doing CrossFit, or instead of doing your powerlifting training, or instead of doing gymnastics or whatever it is. Are you lacking a purpose or a goal? Maybe you've come in, you started your first 9 days of CrossFit, you did a comp, you feel super motivated, everything's new and flashy. Now you're kind of at the stage where you're 6-12 months in and you're like, ooh, I can do a lot. You know what you suck at, you know what you're good at, you avoid the things you don't like, you really lean into the things you do, and then you're kind of in that weird medium where you don't feel like you're improving, so you just go to something that's relatively easy. Not in any world is bodybuilding itself easy, but bodybuilding movements are relatively low skill, they feel good, they get you what you need, and they still maintain some level of fitness. But I would just say, just have a relook at your why to anything. Is there something inside CrossFit that you've been wanting to improve that you do enjoy? Maybe you can set your focus onto that to help regain some momentum, and you might start easing into it. Maybe you need to apply yourself or push yourself to doing a local competition or an online qualifier, or even just an online competition in some form. Maybe you need to retest an old workout, like an old workout you've done in the past that you know that either you can improve on, or maybe you want to see where you're at currently. These things that we need to measure and improve are going to be vital to give you a reason to do the things that you don't want to do more, and also give you a reason to come back into the class environment and start enjoying training again. I know personally so many people, they get to that point where they're kind of just showing up. They don't actually have something to do or train for. And in that case, they need to just try and find or pivot to an area that allows them to give them a reason. One of the guys that just come back CrossFit, he's done 4 Ironmans, Ultra Ironman. He's been doing CrossFit before I started. He said to me he's coming back because he wants to do the Open. He's training for the Open. He wants to do the 2025 CrossFit Open. And I'm like, that's a cool goal. So he's just trying to build his general fitness to become fit enough that when he does the Open, he doesn't completely fail. So I think that's a pretty simple reason why, but it keeps him motivated, keeps him showing up every day, and he's seeing the vast improvements as he's come back into something that he hasn't done in a while.
There you have it, guys. FAQs with Coach Ty. If you found this valuable, be sure to check out some of our other free content and give us a follow.